Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to introduce to you guys our next speaker. She is a major in the human nutrition, food, neuroscience, and exercise with over 2 years of experience working as a athletic training assistant for the football team, cheerleading team, and the high techs. She will be speaking with us on the topic of concussions. So without further ado, I would like to introduce MitchFMichelleG.
Thank you, Mitch, and thank you everyone for having me here. Like I said, my name is MitchFMichelleG, and as you guys know, I am studying human nutrition, foods, and exercise, and I'm also a neuroscience major right now. So for the last couple weeks of this semester, I've been talking to you guys about common sports injuries that I see within the athletic department. So today I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about concussions. So what I want you guys to understand by the end of my presentation today is what a concussion actually is, the impact that it has on the patients, how you detect them, and I also want to tell you guys about CTE, which is chronic traumatic encephalopathy. Sorry, I got like tongue-tied on that word. And I want to tell you guys how it's caused and the impacts of that, as well as the current research that is being done on concussions. So, now we'll go into what a concussion actually is. So if you guys remember from my poster presentation, concussion actually means to shake violently. And what that means in terms of your body is if you were to fall and hit your head, it basically just knocks your brain out of place in the skull, so your brain can get minorly damaged or bruised in the process. So the physical symptoms you will see from that are confusion, loss of sense, or loss of balance or memory, and the patient will also have trouble sleeping probably the night after the concussion actually occurs. So how you would actually detect a concussion, if you are not an athlete, you would probably go to a hospital, an emergency room, or see your family physician, and they would probably give you an MRI or a CAT scan, but they can also give you the SCAT-2 test, which is what I'm going to talk to you guys about next. And the SCAT-2 test is actually what athletic trainers will use in the athletic department too, and this is the sheet that I handed out to you guys. And what this stands for is the Sports Concussion Analysis Tool, and it is based on numbers. So the lower the numbers you score on the test, the less likely you are to actually have a concussion. And what the SCAT-2 test is actually a series of mini tests. So as you can see, the first part of that paper shows you how you, or it asks you like how you feel. So the questions will be like, are you tired? Like, are you fatigued? Are you nauseous? Are you confused? Questions like that, and you rank them. I think it's a 0 through, is it 5 or 6?
6, yeah.
6, and so a 6 would be like you're like very, very severely nauseous, whereas 0 is like you're not nauseous at all, and you kind of rank it between there, and then you add the numbers up. The next section is about comas, which we don't really use in the athletic department unless, you know, they were actually unconscious, but I've never witnessed that. And then the next part is the balance or coordination test, and what that basically is you'll have the athlete stand on like one foot and cover their eye, or you'll have them walk in a straight line, so it's kind of like a sobriety test, I guess, if you want to think about it that way. And then the last section is like the series of like, it's like the memory test, and it gives you like a series of words and numbers and asks you to either put those numbers, like if it's 1, 2, 3, it asks you to say the numbers backwards, so you would say 3, 2, 1, and it gives you like words too, and you kind of just go through that. So now I'll go over how you actually recover from a concussion, and unlike most of the sports injuries that I've told you guys about this year, this isn't simply just something you can take or get surgery on and heal that way. So the way you actually recover from a concussion is rest, and that includes physical and cognitive rest. So what that means is no practicing if you're an athlete, so you can't do any physical activity if you were to suffer from a concussion. But it also means that you cannot go to class, so sometimes that can put students pretty behind if they can't go to class for like a week or two at a time. And the most important thing to do during the recovery process is keep in contact with either your physician or your athletic trainers just to make sure that you're making a full recovery and so that it's smooth and you recover. And lastly is just take care of yourself when you have a concussion. That's an important thing too. So now I'll talk about the impact of a concussion, and the reason I kind of told you guys about resting and recovering fully from a concussion is if you don't recover fully, you can suffer from depression and other mental illnesses such as anxiety. Other than that, mostly all the impact from a single concussion is taking you out of your sport, so obviously that can affect your team or you individually, but other impacts from a single concussion are rare, so now I'll switch gears and talk about what multiple concussions can cause. And basically, multiple concussions can cause you to have longer recovery time from your previous concussion, and it also makes you more susceptible to getting a concussion again, so you have to worry about that. Like once you get one concussion, it's easier for you to get another concussion, so just make sure you're thinking about that. And it can also cause you severe depression, but that's less likely. But what I wanted to talk to you guys about most with multiple concussions is the CTE, which again stands for chronic traumatic encephalopathy. So now we'll switch gears and talk about that. So what CTE actually is it's found, again, like I said, in people who suffer from multiple concussions, and it is found in high-impact athletes, so, you know, football players, hockey players, and boxers usually see this in them later in their life. And what CTE actually is a progressive degenerative disease, and if you guys don't know what that means, it means it's basically like Alzheimer's or Parkinson's disease. The symptoms are pretty much, you know, exactly like those. And what the disease actually does is causes death to the nerve and brain cells, which will eventually cause cell death in the patient and kill them. And why it is called a progressive disease is because it's a relatively slow process. So like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, it's really hard to detect the disease in early stages. So that's kind of why, you know, a lot of research hasn't been done, but now they're starting to do it now. So some of the impacts of CTE is like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, it takes the memory away from the patient. So, you know, there will eventually be a time where they'll forget who their family is, just like Alzheimer's. But something that's even more disturbing about the disease is it actually changes the personality of the patient. So they'll become really irritable and even like suicidal, but they'll be a completely different person than they were before they had the disease. And something that CTE also does is destroys the motor neurons, and like Mitch said, and like I said, I'm also studying neuroscience here. So what motor neurons actually are like cell bodies that actually allow your body to move and function. So if these are destroyed, you'll be left paralyzed. So now you can see like why we're starting to do research on this, because no sport wants to be known for causing this disease, and it's also pretty detrimental to an athlete or the patient who obtains this disease. So now I'll talk about the current research. So Virginia Tech is actually one of the many research institutions. Pretty much all of the other institutions that are doing research on this are Ivy League schools, so it's pretty cool that we're actually doing research on this too. And what we are researching is how different football helmets will protect the football players. So we're testing how different shapes of the helmets and different cushioning in the helmets can actually protect the athlete and cause them or prevent them from having a concussion occur. And something that we use here at Virginia Tech is the HIT system, which stands for Head Impact Telemetry System, and what these are sensors that are placed in the helmet that can detect different head accelerations during the games, and it will send stuff to a computer. Like this is actually here at Virginia Tech, but they use this system at many different schools, and the computer basically monitors the activity and helps detect a concussion. So, I mean, it's pretty cool because, I mean, we're trying to prevent this disease, and our football players hopefully won't suffer from these diseases later in their lives, so we have to think about that. It's pretty cool that we're doing this. And in conclusion, concussions aren't really a sports injury to worry about, again, unless you're suffering from multiple concussions. So if you were to suffer from one, don't stress about it, but it is important to be educated because, again, you know, if you do have one, again, it can be, you know, or it's easier to obtain another one, so you have to think about that. And most importantly, is just keep in contact with your doctor and physician if this were to occur for you. And most importantly, take care of yourself during the injury as well. So I hope you guys learned something today. That's pretty much all I have to tell you guys about concussions. Do you have any questions for me?